Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma, also known as Made in the Moment. I knit, crochet, and make little videos, I guess. So sometime over the summer, one of my TikTok mutuals, Golden Fleece Crochet, started posting crochet hot takes on TikTok. And I loved this idea. A lot of other people made videos like this too, and I made some crochet hot take videos. I've been making one every now and then, kind of just when I think of one. Here's my most recent one, if you didn't see it. My Fiber Arts hot take for the day, holiday edition. I'm gonna say this bluntly and then I'll explain it a little bit. Most people in your life don't deserve a handmade gift. There's obviously more nuance to this. I think close family members, close friends, you can sort of gauge a little bit better. This might be kind of like a Grinchy take on it, and that's fine. I think it's a hot take for a reason, but I kind of say this to free you from the shackles of thinking that just because you can make something means you have to. A little more nuance: if you want to make something and you yourself will genuinely be happy with the process of making it, no matter what the gift receiver's response is like, then go for it. If you have like pent up crochet energy and you want to crochet something, that's fine. I just think a lot of the times you don't have to just because you can. Anyway, discuss in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys think about this. I genuinely thought this was going to be a hot take, and I had so many people almost exclusively agreeing with me in the comments. I never post these to get people to actually agree with them. I usually post them because I'm curious about what other people think, or I want to sort of get the conversation started around something. I thought it would be fun to ask my followers on Instagram for their crochet and knit hot takes. And that's what this video is. I'm going to be reacting to as many as I can stand, basically. So the plan for this is to just go through, I'll read the hot take, I'll tell you whether I agree with it, and then give you some of my thoughts on it. And you can continue the conversation down below in the comments. I think it's fun to do these kinds of videos where I engage with my followers a little bit. It makes things seem, I don't know, it's just always great to have conversations with people and see what other people are thinking about things. So if you want to be a part of future videos like this, then make sure to follow me over on Instagram at Made in the Moment. And that is it. So let's get into this. Okay, the first hot take is weaving in ends is pointless. I'm going to tie my ends in a knot. I'm going to leave them there. This is a hot take, and I actually am going to have to disagree with this one. I think weaving in ends does have a point, especially if you do it really well, because then the ends are all tucked away. They don't come out when you stretch the piece, and there's less of a chance that your piece is going to unravel. I've also decided that I'm not going to get really in depth with a lot of these. I'm just going to give you my initial opinion, and then we'll move on. Okay, here's a good one. Massive yarn collections aren't actually that cool and just show how consumeristic the community and society at large is. Use what you have, you don't need to keep buying more. Size of your stash doesn't make you any better as a fiber artist. I totally agree with this. I understand why this is a hot take, I think, because everything is seen through such like a consumerist lens nowadays that it's hard to kind of separate anything from that, like even a hobby. But I completely agree. I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of continually buying more and more and more, especially when there is a conversation about crochet and knitting as slow fashion, and that means it's ethical, which like, yes, and yes, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. Sure, all of these things are valid, but I think at the end of the day, you can really look at your buying habits, and if you find yourself buying a lot, it might be a good time to ask yourself why you're doing it. If you are buying new yarn to chase that like feeling that you get, the dopamine rush that you get when you add something to your cart, when you open the package, whatever, that's not really a sustainable way to live. And yes, sustainable is a buzzword and whatever, but like literally it's not an activity that you can sustain because you're just spending money on something and then not using it. So this one is a hot take, and I completely agree. Focus on productivity over enjoyment and learning takes the fun out of the craft. I agree. I think that it's really fun to be productive, and I am someone who loves being productive and spending my time doing things. That's part of the reason why I like a physical craft like fiber arts, because I can literally see what my time is going into, but I think that this is completely true. Enjoyment and learning should always be your goals. Next one. I hate receiving yarn for holidays. Yes and no. Thankfully, most people in my life, if they would ever buy me yarn, would ask me what I want first, and then I send them a link and then they buy it for me, and that is like, that's what I want when I'm receiving yarn as a gift. But I do agree that if someone is just like buying you a random skein of yarn, I also don't like that. I don't care if people call crochet things knitwear. At the end of the day, it's loops in loops. Well said, and I totally agree. I made a hot take about this actually as well. It doesn't make a difference to me, and maybe that's because I do both, so I don't have an allegiance to either one, but yeah, call it whatever you want. Crochet, knitwear, it's all basically the same. Crochet is more fun than knitting, but knitting looks better than crochet. I don't fully agree with this. I think both are fun. Honestly, I feel like when I really get into a groove with knitting, it's easier for me to do it without looking. So in that regard, it's like more fun for me, but I think the texture of knit looks, I don't know, better. It's just different. It's different and it has different uses for different pieces. So partial agree on that one. Acrylic is just as good as wool. Wool is too scratchy. Yes, it depends on your preferences. The acrylic debate is a huge one, and one that might be interesting as a whole video to make, but I don't think I really have time to get into it fully here. Different people use different materials depending on their own personal preferences, their own personal beliefs, and their own needs. At the end of the day, it is up to everyone to decide for themselves what works best for them. A lot of people don't like using acrylic yarn because it is plastic, which is true. And then a lot of people don't like using wool because it is an animal product. There's two things, they can exist at once. The question of sustainability is a tricky one. I think in general, wool is better for the environment. If you're vegan, you're not going to use wool. If you have sensitive skin, you're not going to use wool. Wool can be pricier. Acrylic is a really good like starting material, and it works really well for a lot of projects. And I think a big part of this debate that is not always talked about is that there are so many different kinds of acrylic and so many different kinds of wool, and there are varying degrees of sustainability of production of both kinds. Again, if you're interested in this, let me know. I have really been wanting to get into kind of more educational, research-based, like video essay type things that are related to fiber arts. And I think the acrylic versus wool debate might be really interesting to just pull together some facts and put together a video. I hate chunky yarn, specifically for sweaters. Yes and no. I think sometimes it's really fun and I like working with it, but I agree, some of the really chunky sweaters that I've made just end up pilling really easily, and they tend not to fit exactly the way that I want them to. This sweater is like a bulky weight yarn, and it fits well, but I sized up the hook quite a bit, and I don't know, it hasn't pilled at all. So it can be really easy to like jump into a trend of yarn weight, yarn style. And if it doesn't work for you and if you don't like it, then don't make things in it. And that's what it is. I'm not trying to be like dismissive or anything, but I think it's everything is so personal. Okay, there's a couple more that are again in the acrylic versus wool debate. People who shit on other people for using acrylic are just elitist and classist. I think this is true. Like I said before, there are valid reasons for not using acrylic yarn. There are valid reasons for not using animal fiber yarn. But at the end of the day, if acrylic yarn, which generally tends to be in the lower price point, if that's the only thing someone can afford, and people are constantly telling them how horrible of a person they are, or that they are like not sustainable and whatever that even means, then I think there is an element of classism that gets into there and elitism. And there's a lot of problems with that in the crafting world. Okay, I really like this one. No rules. If you like to do things the right way, or if you like to wing it, just do you. No stress. So well said. I think everyone needs to read this every day. I think everyone should have to read that before they're allowed to leave a comment on a TikTok or an Instagram post or anything like that. Okay, and then this person sent me a DM, and I will insert it so you can read the whole thing. But basically the TLDR is straight size artists are less skilled than plus size artists. This is a whole like deep dive topic in and of itself, talking about the sizing in fiber arts, but I agree with this. I really think that any plus size pattern designers out there are putting in more work and more time and they deserve so much more recognition. It's tough that the internet really uplifts people of a certain size, of a certain look, of all of these things, when there's really, really skilled designers out there that just don't fit that mold. Plagiarism is inevitable. There's basic stitching guidelines, so it happens. I actually really agree with this. When you're first getting into designing things, it can be really easy to be very protective of your designs and to think that you are the only person that could have possibly thought of this idea. And sometimes it's just the case that two people have the same idea. Actually, with this sweater design that I'm wearing right now, I designed my first one of these. I put out a tester call for it. And then like literally 2 days later, someone that I follow, I was clicking through stories and I saw that they had basically made like the same design. And I like messaged them and I was like, hey, what's happening here? Like, so I'm editing right now and I actually went back into my messages and realized that she messaged me first. It doesn't really matter because, you know, everything worked out fine, but just like, so I get the story right. She reached out to me and said, hey, I don't know if you've seen it. I've been posting about this as well. I noticed you're doing a tester call for your design. Let me know if you want me to tag you in the caption. It wouldn't have even been enough time from me posting the first post and them seeing it and then copying it for that to have even happened. So I was like, hey, this is crazy. Like, I just made a sweater exactly like this and I'm like putting out a pattern for it. It ended up being just a complete coincidence. And the way that this whole thing like was handled was like completely fine. Like there was no ill will, no bad feelings on either side. They were like really quick to be like, yeah, I'm not looking to put out a pattern at all. Like I just, you know, I can like send people your way if they want to buy a pattern, but like it was not intentional at all. And that was kind of crazy. And like, you know, this is not a groundbreaking idea. It's a split tone sweater with a wave on the front, you know, like it's someone else is bound to have the same idea. It was kind of crazy though that it was like literally in the span of like a couple days. But I think this is true. There's obviously times where it is intentional and people are just ripping other people off, and that sucks. And I think that it's really right to speak out about things like that. But there's a certain point where it's like, all right, we can all have the same ideas. It doesn't mean that someone was intentionally copying you. And I think the important thing is to just have respect when you go into conversations like this. And usually it's pretty easy to tell if someone is trying to rip you off or not. Usually they'll like block you. But if you just go in and be understanding and know that even if they did intentionally steal your design, they might not really know the weight of what that means to you. So it can be just a good conversation to have. But I agree. There's only so many shapes that a sweater can have. There's only so many ways that you can do certain things. So yes. Okay. I think it's okay to make things inspired by other fiber artists as long as you don't sell it. Yes, this one is tricky. And I think this is actually a really hot take because it's very different for different designers depending on their goals. So my goals as a designer are to make designs that people can replicate and that people do replicate. That's my goal as a designer. There's a lot of other designers out there where their goal is to start a brand where they sell finished pieces. So for someone whose goal is to be selling finished pieces, it's going to feel different when someone replicates their design especially without asking for permission, than it would for me, because my goal is to share my work for that reason specifically. I don't think there's any way that you should or should not feel about your craft. It's totally just up to what you want and what you want to get out of it. But I would say if you're ever not sure and you can get in touch with a designer, then do it. Send them a message, send them an email, and at the end of the day, they can't stop you from making something, but it is understandable that someone might not want you to. There's no way for me to speak on this fully about like the community as a whole. Okay, this is a good one. A lot of knit/crochet creators are not about slow fashion because they're constantly making, hardly wearing. Yes. This has been something that has been difficult for me to learn as I kind of settle into my crafting mojo, I guess. I definitely fell into the trap of how many things can I make, how fast can I do it, and part of that is fueled by the end of the month wrap-ups that I would make, and I still make them, but as like a people pleaser workaholic that I am, it was really encouraging and like affirming for me to get all these comments of people being like, oh my god, how did you make all of these in 1 month. Oh my God, I could never. I couldn't even make this much in a year. And I am realizing that there's just physically no way for me to wear all of these things and to really get use out of them. And a lot of the things that I was making really quickly just weren't up to the craftsmanship that I really would want them to be if I were to sell them. So I've been trying my best to slow down a little bit, work on bigger, slower projects, things like that. But at the end of the day, slow fashion is not just about how much you're making. It's about how much you're getting use out of it. So if you're making a lot of pieces and you're getting a lot of use out of them, if you're finding them places to and giving them to people and things like that, then great. And I really don't think that there's a huge problem with it as long as you are consuming your yarn ethically and getting it from like the best source that you can. Major creator accounts don't have enough size/body type representation. Yes. This is, I kind of was talking about this a little bit before when we were talking about designers, straight size designers, but this is, I think, a huge problem. And even when I go out of my way to try and find body representation for testers or for designs or anything like that, it's really hard to find. Instagram makes it difficult to find. And I would love to see more size representation in like a bigger account. There are a few, and I would love to see more. The thing is, it's not that there's no body representation, but if you took the top like 50 crochet knitwear creators on Instagram, they're almost all straight size. That's weird. It's weird. I don't know how we fix this besides just being aware of it and going out of our way to search for content from people that are different than we are, or looking for people that represent the body type that we are and actively seeking it out. I think that's the only way that there's going to be any sort of change, because Instagram is a business, right? It is going based, it pushes content that it thinks people will engage with and look at and spend more time on the app looking at. So if we are telling Instagram by searching out creators that are different body types, by looking for people that don't fit this mold that is already popular, then that's the way that we can make change. This person says, I don't like watching TV while I crochet. That is a hot take, and I disagree with you. I think you're wrong. I love watching TV while I crochet because I need all of the stimulation that I can get. I have a really hard time just like watching TV or movies now and sitting there and doing nothing. I like have to have something going in with my hands all the time. So I disagree. Sometimes the abstract free-handed creations can get a bit ugly. Yeah, I agree. I've definitely made things that are ugly. And for me, that's like part of the charm of these free-handed creations, is that you just don't know what you're gonna get. And saying all of that, ugly is subjective, right? Beauty is subjective. I think that a lot of art is and can be ugly, and that is a great thing. Crocheting/knitting should be a publicly accepted form of stress relief, like stress balls, especially in an educational setting and for people with ADHD, etc. It shouldn't be considered rude or being off task for basic stitches, not complicated big table of tools projects. I completely agree with this. I think that I would listen a lot better in class if I could have just like a big stockinette sweater on the table and knit along to that. Because a lot of times if I am struggling to like listen to something, I'll sit there and start like writing things down. I'll try and take notes, but sometimes it turns into me just writing a to-do list, which it means that my brain is completely off task. I'm not listening at all. But if I had something to do with my hands to kind of keep me engaged a little bit physically, then I do think that I would be better at listening. I totally agree. I don't know how we make this happen, but great, great hot take. The want to be original is so paralyzing sometimes. Beautifully said. This is kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier. You know, plagiarism can come up really easily and being original is difficult. And I think that that's just something that you have to figure out. I always say this and I try to follow this advice myself. Sometimes it's difficult, but if you make things that you love, then that's all you can do. Because at the end of the day, you are the only person that's going to be with you the whole time. No matter how many followers you have, you're still the person that's sitting there making the thing. I have a pretty big audience, but I don't make things for my audience most of the time. I make it because it's something that I want, it's something I want to wear, or it's something that I think is cool. And sometimes that means it's a very original thing. And sometimes it's like, this is a pretty basic thing, but it fits exactly the way that I want it to fit me. And if other people like that too, great. Try not to let it get you down too much. Easier said than done, of course. When someone asks me how long something took to make, yes, I hate this too, actually. I didn't used to mind it that much. And then recently, I don't time myself. I don't pay attention how long anything takes. And it's all so subjective anyway. If something took me 20 minutes, it's not going to take you 20 minutes. It's going to take you 25 or 15. Like there's no way that anything that I make or that you make or that any of my friends make is going to take us the same amount of time because we have different speeds. We have different work patterns. I just don't think it matters that much. And that's just me. Okay, this one's not really a hot take, but I'm going to read it anyway because I think it's important. The community is so much more supportive of my physical disabilities than any other art community. Yeah, and I don't know if it's just the nature of the kinds of people who are drawn to fiber arts or that there's a lot of people with like chronic illnesses in the fiber arts community because it's a good activity to do if you have some kind of chronic illness. But I have found so much good representation of physical disabilities, chronic illness, things like that. And I have met so many people through the internet that I've gotten to hear their stories. And of course, there's not like a monolith of people and it's not an overarching umbrella, but I mean, the individuals that I have seen and their day-to-day lives that they chronicle on their Instagram stories and things like that, I wouldn't have been exposed to without this community, which is kind of strange. I don't know if it necessarily falls into the category of hot take, but I do think it's true, and I wish that other art communities would be as supportive and accepting as the fiber arts community is. Okay, here's a good hot take. Most of the stuff I see people make is extremely ugly. I'm not even going to comment on that. I'm just going to leave that one out there, and you decide for yourself. You don't have to make like 5 finished objects in a month. It's a hobby. It should be fun. Yeah, I think that like the hustle culture, productivity mindset has really like bled into this thing that should be a hobby and should be fun to do. And I know I personally can feel a lot of like weird guilt when I'm not working on a project or when it takes me a really long time to finish something that I know should be, you know, like, oh, if I pick this project up, I can finish it in 20 minutes. But I don't want to, and I shouldn't have to force myself to pick something up just to finish it. Yeah, I think it's true. If you're not enjoying something, don't make it. Don't work on it. Don't spend time making something that you're not enjoying, and it's okay to jump ship whenever you want. Yarn bowls don't serve much of a purpose other than being cute. Yeah, I don't have a yarn bowl. Like, yeah, my yarn sometimes rolls away from me, but then I just go grab it and put it back next to me on the couch. I have never had the need for a yarn bowl, and I don't think I'll ever get one unless I somehow like stumble across one or happen upon one in my possession. But yeah. Okay, a few more. Amigurumis are overrated. That is a hot take. And I don't think I agree with that. I think that they're really cool. I have never made one, but I was just talking to Zach and Drew on their Casual Yarns podcast, and I am very motivated to try making some now. I don't think they're overrated. I think they take a lot of skill and a different kind of skill than making wearables. Look at this, like on my forehead. Fair Isle is ugly as sin. That is a huge statement, and I will agree that some Fair Isle designs that I've seen are not my style. I'll put some pictures up on the screen of what Fair Isle is. The ones that I'm going to show are ones that I like. I'm not going to like put anyone on blast here, but yeah. Crochet jumpers without color work or a fun stitch are ugly. No comment. Knitting/crochet social media is toxic because it makes people believe in quantity over quality. Yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where it can be really easy to feel like you just have to like pump out designs, pump out finished objects, things like that. But yeah, I have really, really taken a step back. I haven't released a pattern in like months now, honestly. And it's been really fun just getting to go back and make my old designs and perfect them and tweak things. And just like slow down and not always be worrying about like the thing that I'm designing next. I think it can be really easy to burn out as like a pattern designer if your goal is to release a new design every month. Like I can't believe that I was doing that for for so long. I have no idea how I did it, and I have no desire to do that anymore. I would rather take more time on the things that I design and release less patterns and finish less projects too. My New Year's resolution for 2023 is to finish less projects. Scrolling for inspo can turn into comparison and kills creativity. Set limits. Totally agree. It can be really easy to look at what other people are doing. And this again goes back to like the hustle mindset or whatever. It can be really easy to look at someone and be like, wow, they are doing so much. Wow, they did this. They put out this pattern, they did this thing. Yeah, I definitely fall into the trap of comparing myself to other people. And if I spend too much time looking at other people's work, I find it really difficult to come up with my own original ideas, because I'll have an idea and be like, wow, that's such a great idea. Oh my gosh, I'll write it down. I'll like start making a little sketch for it. And then like 30 minutes later, I'll be like, wait, I'm pretty sure that this already exists. And then it turns out the reason that I got this great idea is because I saw someone else do basically the same thing. Like the other day I was like, oh my gosh, I should make a frog sweater. And I like started sketching out a little frog design. And then I was like, this seems really familiar for some reason. Let me like search around a little bit. And I had seen Ty Bailey's poison dart tapestry like earlier that day. And that is like the exact position that my frog was in. And I was like, yeah, okay. And that's not to say that I can't make a sweater with a frog on it, but that is directly where that came from. And it wasn't a spark of creative genius like I thought it was at the time. It was just my subconscious putting together two ideas into one thing. I get my best inspiration from things that are not fiber arts related. So, you know, like the texture of a painting, or like the color combination of two houses next to each other or something like that. Learning about a random animal and then deciding that that's the animal I'm gonna put on a sweater next. My back hurts. But yeah, I am going to end this video now. Like I said, the sun is setting and I've been talking for almost an hour. Those are all of the hot takes that I got submitted to me. This was so fun to make and put together. I definitely want to do more videos where I am interacting with followers and follower suggestions and things like that. So like I said, if you want to be a part of things like that, then make sure to follow me on Instagram. You can also follow me on TikTok. I post on both of those pretty regularly. And yeah, please leave your ideas in the comments below. I would love to really like get into some of these. Do you agree with things I said? Do you disagree? Do you want to hear me go more in depth about any of these things? That's all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps, and subscribe. One of my other New Year's resolutions for the year is to reach 100,000 subscribers. It is a crazy goal, I think. I am just about to hit 20K at the time of filming this video, but I want a YouTube plaque, so I'm putting it out there into the world. Crazier things have happened, I think, so if you want to be a part of helping me achieve my goals, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.